we talking about practice. Not a game. We talking about practice.
Now, back to the After Practice podcast with Lake Lewis.
Welcome, everyone, to another After Practice podcast. Appreciate you joining me as always. And you can tell that this one's a little different as I'm sitting in beautiful St. Thomas right now and had a great time and met some great people as well. So, we've got a lot that we're going to be talking about in today's podcast. The Washington Commanders really making some big and bold moves as far as their free agent signings. They've also had some players who left the team, and we'll talk about that as well. But as we always do before we get into the show, you can subscribe to this podcast. You can actually watch the podcast, and if you are watching it, then obviously you see that I am sitting in beautiful St. Thomas. If you want to subscribe, you can go to Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Deezer, Spreaker, you name the carrier, and the podcast is on there. It's on Amazon, it's on Google as well. If you want to watch it, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel for Sports Journey, and that's how you will find this podcast on YouTube. As always, you can subscribe and follow me on social media. All you have to do is look up at Lake Lewis Jr., and it's on all social media carriers as well. Twitter, which is now known as X, Facebook, IG. Once again, it's at Lake Lewis. And you can go to sportsjourney.com and see some of the great articles and work from some of my colleagues who do a great job covering the NFL, the NBA, and the NHL. You can go to sportsjourney.com. We also have to give shouts out to our sponsors who help make this show possible and power us. So I want to say, if you get a chance to check out the good folks over at Thermopack, thermopack.com, and they've got an innovative mouth shield, mouth guard, that changes colors to let you know your body heat for athletes. And it also has a technology that helps prevent concussion. So it's a really innovative mouth guard that I really think is getting ready to take the world by storm. So check them out once again at thermopack.com. You can also check out the good folks over at Sideline Prep. Hey, if you're a cheerleader and you want to become a professional cheerleader, Sideline Prep is the way to go. They do everything possible to get you prepared and ready for auditions and tryouts with professional teams in the NBA as well as the NFL. So once again, you can go to sidelineprep.com. And then, of course, Chill Skins, and I have the towel actually in my room, and I wanted to bring it out here, but I've had that thing on my head pretty much all week here in St. Thomas. So Chill Skins is another innovative technology, and it's an actual, towel that it cools you off, and it really does work. If you dip it in the pool or if you run it underwater, if you're at home or whatever, and you put it around you, it literally will keep you cool for a couple of hours. And I've been using that thing really strong. And of course, as I always mention, it's something that I've used in training camp, and actually was just handed it. So this is it right here, folks. So yeah, trust me when I tell you this thing works. So the good folks over at Chill Skins, as I supplied myself and Janine with a whole bunch of these things. So again, you can go to chillskins.com for more information on them. And also on our website at sportsjourney.com, there's a promo code, LL320. So you'll see that on there. So it will help you get a discount if you were to purchase those. Now, let's get right into it. Washington Commanders, how do you feel about what they're doing via free agency? I feel great. I think that this is what's been needed to be done for this franchise for quite a while. And what do I mean by that? Well, the signings that they're bringing in, the players that they're bringing in, you've got a sprinkle of everything. You've got the grizzled veterans and Bobby Wagner, linebacker coming from Seattle, and then you have Austin Eckler, versatile running back coming from the Chargers. And yeah, these guys are getting up there in age now. They're probably on the downward slope of their careers, but they're still really good football players. And outside of the things that they do on the field, it's what they're going to be able to provide off the field for the Commanders and in that locker room. And I think that this is something that this team has been devoid of for a long time. They've been devoid of leadership. And you can't put the onus on a Terry McLaurin or John Allen or Daron Payne, because these guys haven't won in the professional ranks. They were great college players, won at their respective schools of Ohio State and Alabama, but they haven't won in the professional, realm. And I think when you looked across that locker room over the past few years, it wasn't too many guys that could, galvanize the locker room, so to speak. There weren't any guys in there that could stand up and say, hey, look, follow me. I'm going to lead you guys. This is what we did over here where I won a Super Bowl, or over there where I won a Super Bowl. They didn't have any guys in that locker room that could say that. So now they have guys that are coming in from outside. Bobby Wagner won Super Bowls, while he was in Seattle. He lost in a Super Bowl while he was in Seattle. So this is a guy that can stand up and say, not only did I win Super Bowls, but this guy's pretty much a Hall of Fame football player. Austin Eckler, one of the leading running backs in the league over the past 5-6 seasons. As a matter of fact, if you look at Austin Eckler, I think over the past 7 years, I think he's the leading touchdown guy for running backs as far as the totals. So this is a guy that knows how to get into the end zone, that will help a Brian Robinson. Bobby Wagner will help Jamin Davis, regardless if they move Jamin Davis to the edge, which it looks like they may. But then you think of some of the other guys that they've brought in. Frankie Louisville, comes from Carolina, a linebacker that's tenacious, that has a high motor, a high energy guy, good guy in the locker room, so that's another plus for this team. And it seems like what Adam Peters and Dan Quinn have done is they've gone out and they've gotten classy guys, guys that are dogs on the field and puppies off of it, and I say that with all respect. Guys that are going to come on the field and be nasty, violent, but once they leave the field, they're going to be approachable guys, nice guys, community leaders, and that's what you want for your football team. So I'm really impressed with the list of guys that they put up. So we're going to put up here, the list of some of the free agent signings, and you tell me what you think of this group, okay? You have tight end Zach Ertz. We know Zach Ertz comes over from the Cardinals, but Zach Ertz, everyone knows, is an Eagle. He played most of his career with the Philadelphia Eagles. And Zach Ertz comes in and he's pretty much replacing Logan Thomas, who the team let go. So he's going to be the experienced tight end in the room. So whether they draft a tight end or they sign one in the second part of free agency, which is in June, this is a guy that's going to be able to come in and hopefully help the younger guys that they have in the room. I like that signing quite a bit, and it's on a cheap 1-year deal, so it's not, or 2-year deal, so it's not something that they're locked in and they're going to be cap strung because of this. Matter of fact, all of these signings that I'm getting ready to talk to you about are really friendly deals for this Commanders football team, and I think that when you do it that way, it gives you wiggle room just in case it doesn't work out. But the one thing that you will see with all these players is that the majority of them are 26, 27 years old, which in football terms means that you've had several years in the NFL to get your feet wet, to learn what you do well, to learn what you don't do well. And now, at this age, this is pretty much your second contract. And this is the contract where it's go time. It shows that if you can be a frontline starter in the NFL, or it shows that you're going to always be pretty much a reserve caliber player. Well, I think Washington, with Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, they're betting and banking on these guys to show that now they're ready to step into the forefront, into the limelight, and be frontline football players. They brought in defensive end Dorrance Armstrong from Dallas. Obviously, he played for Dan Quinn. He played for new defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr. So that's a great signing for a team that was devoid of edge rushers. Remember, they traded Montez Sweat and Chase Young, so this team needed edge rushers. They get one in Dorrance Armstrong, a guy, when you look at his production and numbers in Dallas, kind of got caught up playing, with two Pro Bowl guys that were always getting after the quarterback, and Michael Parsons and Lawrence. So, you think about these guys that they had there, and so Dorrance Armstrong kind of got caught up in that. But now he has a chance to come to Washington and shine. He really does. And he's going to be playing next to something that he didn't have in Dallas. Dallas didn't have two monster tackles in the middle of the field. Where he's coming to Washington, where you have Daron Payne and John Allen, guys that Pro Bowlers at that position in the middle of the trenches. So that should help free him up even more on the edge. The team also brought in, Cleveland Farrell, another defensive end, another edge rusher, a guy that was the 4th overall pick, I think, in 2019. and hasn't lived up to that number as far as where he was drafted, but he's still a really good professional football player. And this might be the jump start that his career needs as far as being able to get back to being an impact player. Last year in San Francisco, because he played the previous 4 in Oakland, now the Vegas Raiders, but last year in San Francisco, obviously Adam Peters saw what he can do, and he was a guy that, didn't do bad, didn't do poorly at all. So I think that was a smart move for Washington, more of a depth signing for this defensive line unit. Dante Fowler, another defensive end. And guess what? Yeah, he too is coming from the Dallas Cowboys. And so that means Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr., they're familiar with his game and they see what he can do. And I think that's another brilliant signing for Washington, another 1 or 2 year deal, nothing long term, a prove it to me type deal that doesn't hit your salary cap too hard. Then you start to think about some of the other moves. Another need position was at center. Tyler Larson, I thought filled in admirably last year at center, but Nick Gates was the free agent signing that they had brought in from the New York Giants before last year, and he didn't play well at all. And naturally, they released him recently. So you needed to fill that position. And a lot of people are saying you go ahead and you draft a guy. Remember last year in the 3rd round, they drafted Ricky Stromberg, and it didn't necessarily work out, at least not at this point, at this juncture. So what do? They go out, they sign Tyler Biadasz, the center from the Cowboys, who has several starts under his belt. So I think that's a good move. And let's face it, you need a really good center, considering more than likely that they're going to draft a quarterback at that number 2 position. Quarterback needs a really stout veteran center that can help him with cadences, delivery of the ball, all those things, as far as pointing out different line rotations at the line of scrimmage. Those are all the things that a young quarterback will need, and Washington's addressed that. So that's a good move on that part. And then you look at some of the other moves. Nick Allegretti, comes over from Kansas City. He's got a Super Bowl ring. And remember what I said at the top of the show. You want to be able to have a guy in the locker room that can say, look, this is what we did. I've done this. This is how we won a Super Bowl. These are the dog days that we had to fight through. And he's got a true testament. I mean, he really does, because if you think about him being on that offensive line and having more than likely a rookie quarterback behind him as well, he's going to be able to turn and say, this is how Patrick did things. And we're talking about Patrick Mahomes. This is how the GOAT was doing stuff. So these are good things for the Commanders in that regard. They also brought in Marcus Mariota, a veteran quarterback, former Heisman winning quarterback from University of Oregon, the Beavers. So he's a guy that's kind of been around the league in the most recent years. Philadelphia Eagles, Atlanta Falcons. He was with the Tennessee Titans for a while. But this is a good signing for this team because you needed that veteran guy. Jacoby Brissett went back to New England where he has some success as a player, so he went back there as a free agent. You bring in Marcus Mariota and Brian Johnson, who's now here as the one of the offensive coordinators. He's not the offensive coordinator. We know that's Cliff Kingsbury, but Brian Johnson will have a role to help Cliff Kingsbury as a pass game coordinator. Guys really good with quarterbacks as well. So him and Tavita Pittman will also work together. So Brian Johnson had Marcus Mariota in Philadelphia last year. So, once again, they're going to bring in some different offensive sets and things of that nature. So that will help, again, the Washington Commanders. And they also filled some voids too. The long snapper. They had a lot of problems last year with Cheeseman and just didn't get the job done. And, so they move on from him and they bring in Tyler Ott, a veteran guy that's had some success. So that fills a really big void from a special team standpoint. And then to top it off, they signed kicker Brandon McManus, a veteran that's just a consistent veteran kicker, a guy that, last year I don't think he missed any of his extra points, and that's something that the Commanders struggled with last year with Joey Sly and Cheeseman, obviously long snapper. So now if you can get McManus and Tyler Ott, to do their job, you already have one of the best punters in the NFL in Tress Way. So I think that they're shoring up their special teams unit with that. if you just look at this overall unit, they also signed another linebacker yesterday, which was good, so now he's more of a special teams guy. So, these are good signings for this team. There are some guys that left, and, we could not come on here, regardless if I'm in a great location or not, we couldn't come on here and not talk about the fact that Sam Howell was traded. And Sam Howell last year at some point showed that he could be potentially a franchise quarterback that you build with. And I actually even tweeted out at a point last year, and me too, I was a guy that felt like I had seen enough when he had those really hot stretches that this is a guy that maybe you can build with if you get him a line and some more pieces around him. Well, as you know, when teams go out and they bring in a new coach, a new GM, and they inherit players, a lot of these guys aren't their guys. And they may not have ranked these guys high when they were grading them for their, older teams. And I'm not saying that they didn't feel fondly about Sam Howell. Sam Howell's a class act. He's a good kid. He really is. But I think we saw as the season progressed last year that maybe Sam Howell wasn't the franchise quarterback that maybe we thought. Maybe we thought that he was a very good pro, which I think we all do. And I think he will have some success in Seattle, out over there with, their new head coach. But I think for Washington, this is a full recalibration, as they say. They're not, rebuilding, they're recalibrating. And I think that they feel like with the three quarterbacks that are coming out this year, one of those guys you can get, and all three of them are considered to be franchise caliber quarterbacks. All of them have their issues, as most young guys do. But for the most part, these guys are gunslingers. These guys are, just difference makers. And I think for Washington, trading Sam Howell and walking away with the third, by the way, which was a coup. I personally feel like they fleeced Seattle. That's just, how I feel. They switched picks. They traded Sam Howell and I think a sixth and maybe even a seventh, and they walk away with a third and a fifth for him. I mean, that's incredible. That's a haul if you're the Commanders. So now it puts yourself in position to have all of these draft picks. So you move on from Sam Howell. You also move on from Kendall Fuller. We'll put the graphic up here. Kendall Fuller goes to the Miami Dolphins. And I don't think that that's a bad move. He signed a 2-year deal with the Dolphins for $16.5 million. That's not a bad look if you are the Dolphins, and it's not a bad look if you're the Commanders to let Kendall Fuller go and seek something else, because you are, as we said, you're recalibrating. They haven't addressed pretty much the corner spot just yet. They did go out and get Jeremy Chin, a safety, from the Carolina Panthers, a really good one. And I think by going out and getting him, you kind of saw that perhaps the writing could have been on the wall for Cam Curl, and naturally it was, because as you see right here, Cam Curl signed with the Los Angeles Rams, a 2-year deal, I think up to $13 million. So, it's a friendly deal for the Rams. For Washington, they let a guy that they drafted in the 7th round out of Arkansas, who became a really viable part of their defense. They see him move on. So these are the things that you have to do when you're starting anew. Sometimes you have to let fan favorites go. Sometimes you have to let guys that, you wonder how deep their potential ran. So sometimes you have to let them go, and they did do that. I think overall the body of work is going to be scrutinized, because you did let some guys go. You did make a trade. But I think if you really look at what they're doing here, as the young people say, they're cooking right now. They are. They're cooking with some hot grease, and they're putting their stamp on this team for the type of players that they want, the type of personalities they want, the type of camaraderie in the locker room that they want, and more importantly, the dogs on the field that they want. And I think if you're a Commanders fan, you should be really excited right now, because this thing's moving in a positive direction. And remember, they still haven't gotten to the draft yet. So we'll put up here, look at the picks now for this team as far as the draft and what they have to work with. I mean, you can't ask for anything better than this. I mean, if you're the Commanders, you have the 2nd overall pick in the draft. You have the 36th overall pick in the draft, which is a second rounder. You have the 40th overall pick, which is a second rounder. You have the 67th overall pick, which is a third rounder. They have 3 third rounders coming up, folks. The 67th pick, the 78th overall, and the 100th overall, all in the third round. 4th round pick, you have the 139th overall pick. Now you have in the 5th round, the 152nd overall pick. And finally, in the 7th round, you have the 222nd overall pick. So if you look at these numbers, those 9 picks, that's a lot of picks for a football team. And I also want to let everyone know, that's the reason why you haven't seen this team go out and make the huge splash, signing one of the top players at his position in the league who was a free agent. Because with these 9 picks, you've got to pay these players as well. So you can't use all your cap money up. You can't use all of your roster up money-wise, because you still have to pay all of these rookies. And because a lot of these picks, think about it, 6 of them are in the first 3 rounds. That you're going to have to pay for that. So they needed to keep some of their money, and they still needed some wiggle room as well, because we all know that coming up in June, you have the second wave of free agency where you have cap casualties. And these are the players that are really good football players, but maybe their teams were having financial issues or whatever, and they needed to move on. So sometimes you see a lot of guys released at that point that are Pro Bowl caliber players and Pro Bowl players. So if you're Washington, you did your due diligence early in this first part of free agency, and now you get ready for the draft that's coming up at the end of next month in April. So this is good times right now, folks, if you are a Commanders fan. And again, I wanted to jump on with you real quick and talk with you and give you my thoughts on the direction of where they're going. And in parting shots, I do want to say this. Not to stir the pot here, but when you trade Sam Howell away, and all you did was bring in Marcus Mariota, who's proven to be a viable backup quarterback in the NFL. I think most of us will say, I'm not sure if he's entrenched as a starter in the NFL, not at this point in his career, but he's a very good backup and a good mentor on top of that. But a guy that will compete for his starting job. But I think it's apparent now, if you're a Commanders fan, that they're going to use that second overall pick on a rookie quarterback. I'm going to throw 3 different variables out there as to why this happened. You move on from Sam Howell, where everyone knows that his relationship with Drake May of North Carolina, they're best friends. And I always thought it would be difficult to, potentially draft a Drake May and pair him up with his best friend and have them compete against each other for the starting job, to be the leader of a team. So perhaps if they're thinking of drafting Drake May, they moved Sam Howell out of the way so there wouldn't be any issues like that. That's something that you have to consider, okay, if they're going to look at Drake May. If you're going to look at Jaden Daniels, the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback from LSU, well, what you did was you pretty much opened the floodgates as far as surrounding him with some more talent, just getting some players in play. So you can take either one of those quarterbacks and not have to trade out of that position. They're yours to be had, whoever you decide you want between the two. So you move Sam Howell out the way. So clearly one of those 2 guys will be in tow, unless the third variable, and for me the most important variable, is they just, by trading Sam Howell, got some more draft picks. They got in another third rounder, so that's why they have 3 now. They have a 5th rounder now. So now, if you are potentially trying to put together a package to entice the Bears to come off that number 1 pick so you can draft a Caleb Williams, you've got more picks now. You've got more options, so that if you do have to give up a little more than what you want, you still have something to fall back on to continue to draft your own guys as well. So those are 3 variables that could be in factor when it comes to what the Washington Commanders are going to decide to do. They could decide to not even draft a quarterback. They could decide, we're going to go with Mariota right now. We're going to shore some things up, and we'll look to the future next year when a Shedeur Sanders comes out of Colorado or something like that. Personally, I'm pretty convinced that this move was made, no question at all. And I'm putting my professional knowledge on the line here, and I'm telling you, they're drafting a quarterback at number 2. The question is, who are they going to draft? Are they going to trade up to get Caleb? or are they going to stay at pat and take either Jaden Daniels or Drake May? We're going to find out in a month and a half. But I'm telling you right now, it's going to be a quarterback at the number 2 position. I'm like 95% sure of that. I think all the moves that have been made pretty much convinced me that that's the route that they're going to take. So, folks, I gave you 25 minutes, unscripted, just coming at you the way I normally do. Appreciate everybody all week that was reaching out to me and asking me, was I going to put something up? And I wasn't. You know, I was just trying to get away from a vacation, worked real hard to get up to this point, and you know, myself, Janine, we had a great time here and met some great folks. Want to say what's up to Barbara and David Oakley. You know, I met them. They were gracious enough to go around the island with us. We had dinner and everything. So really nice older couple from North Carolina, where my father's from. There were a lot of similarities and a lot of stories we talked about. So met so many people, saw some familiar faces because we were here before last year as well. So if you ever get a chance to visit beautiful St. Thomas, I would definitely recommend that. You don't need a passport or anything like that. It's the U.S. Virgin Islands, so you can come on out. I know they're not paying me to say all this stuff. I just want to be gracious and in our time here. So anyway, folks, lots of stuff coming up. Remember, you can subscribe to this podcast. All you have to do right here, if you're watching it on YouTube, is hit that subscribe button. And then, of course, you can go to Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Google, Audacity, you name it, it's on there. The After Practice Podcast with Lake Lewis. Again, appreciate you guys, and we'll be doing another one real soon. So, as we always say, spend time with your family and friends. Leave everyone else alone. Be safe out there. Take care.